name is Garrett Oakley. Theodore Roosevelt was one of this nation's greatest presidents. He was a hunter and outdoor enthusiast who greatly appreciated what the land that this country had to offer. After arranging a Louisiana Purchase, Roosevelt set aside millions of acres to be made into national and state parks. Roosevelt once said, "Here's your country. Cherish these natural wonders. Cherish the natural resources. Cherish the history and romance as a sacred heritage for your children and your children's children. Do not let selfish men or greedy interests skin your country of its beauty, its riches, or its romance." I want to talk to you a little about the CCA, the Coastal Conservation Association. The CCA is a non-profit marine conservation organization whose objective is to conserve, promote, and enhance the present and future availability of marine wildlife and habitat. With an increase in population and cities expanding, when coastal cities expanding, they're leaving a larger and larger footprint left behind on the marine habitat. In the 1960s and 70s, redfish and trout were nearly eradicated from gill netting and overfishing. Thanks to the CCA, though, and organizations alike, these fish species have made a full recovery. The CCA now has 17 chapters spanning from the Gulf of Mexico to the Atlantic seaboard. According to the CCA website, the CCA has been active in virtually every national fisheries debate since 1984 and has participated productively in the state and federal fisheries management issues for longer than 2 decades. So tonight I want to talk to you a little bit about the need for coastal marine conservation across the Gulf and Atlantic seaboard, and I also want to talk to you about what the CCA does as an organization to protect the marine wildlife and habitat. And lastly, I want to talk about what the CCA has done in the past and what it plans to do in the future to continue to protect the marine and habitat. In the 60s and 70s, the use of gill nets was very popular for commercial fishing, and high bag limits also led to the decrease in redfish and trout. Gill nets were a very effective way of catching fish. However, they ended up killing every fish that swam into them. There's no way of releasing any fish or deciding what fish were caught or released. The CCA played a large role in unveiling the true destruction of gill nets. According to the CCA website, the CCA began in 1977 after drastic commercial overfishing along the Texas coast decimated redfish and trout populations. 14 concerned recreational anglers created the Gulf Coast Conservation Association to combat the commercial anglers and conserve the resources. The spirit of conservation soon swept the Texas coast and made it to the Florida coast within a couple years, with an increase in fishermen and high bag limits also contributing to the decrease in fish populations. The CCA worked since 1977 tracking the numbers and habitat in which these fish lived in. The CCA works hand in hand with the state government and Game Wardens Association to change size limits and bag limits to make sure they manage these fish populations accordingly. Even today, they're still battling the gill net problems, as you can see. So, to tell you a little bit about the CCA, as I said, is a non-profit marine conservation organization that was founded in 1977. It now stretches from the Mexico border all the way up to reaches of Maine. The CCA is unique, though, in that it does have a national foothold. Each state operates its own organization, so that the organization in Texas and all the money that people donate, it doesn't go to Louisiana or Florida. Each state operates their own organization, and they decide where their money goes to throughout the years. As the website says, as the CCA website says, CCA's unmatched breadth and depth of volunteer involvement has made it the largest marine conservation group of its kind. And since the CCA is one of the largest of its kind, has a variety of resources and projects and studies they work out throughout the year to help preserve the habitat in which these marine animals live in. The CCA doesn't work only on the coastlines, though it also goes up into the rivers and lakes of the mainland. Some of the projects the CCA is actively involved in, according to their website, as you can see here, are scientific studies, scholarship funding, artificial reefs, hatcheries, contaminant hydrology studies, freshwater inflows, and they also support local law enforcement. CCA has made a great impact in the past, and as an organization's efforts drive to improve and promote the marine wildlife and habitat in the future as well. The CCA does many big projects throughout the years, and so tonight I wanted to include the Cedar Bayou project. This is right close to where I grew up in Corpus Christi. Cedar Bayou was a natural cut formed between the Aransas Bay and the Gulf of Mexico, and it had been around since before the 1800s. In 1879, there was an oil cap that blew off and dumping millions of gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. So in order to prevent that oil from washing into the bay, they went ahead and closed down the cut, and so it's been closed ever since then. Just this past year, they spent millions of dollars to reopen the bay to allow water to circulate. Since the water had been stagnant for so long, an article in the Texas Parks and Wildlife read, while coastal residents were relieved the productive bay system had been spared from the serious threat of the oil. The lack of water exchange in the Aransas Bay and the Gulf slowly sapped the vigor out of the bay and suppressed the fish and wildlife production. The CCA draws its strength from its thousands of members and volunteers that pay their dues and volunteer annually to help support their wildlife. Without its committed members, the CCA wouldn't be able to do what it does today. It holds fishing tournaments and banquets yearly to help raise money to support the habitat and fisheries. I hope you've learned a lot about the CCA, about what the CCA does to help conserve and promote the present and future availability of the coastal resources. The CCA depends on its members and volunteering to do work throughout the community. CCA wants to make sure that our future generations will get to enjoy the same habitat and marine life as we can. I've talked about the use of gill nets, the large volunteer group that CCA has, and what it plans to do in the future to help promote and preserve the marine habitat. I hope you learned a lot tonight. Thank you for listening.